You're listening to Puck and Roll. Here's your host, Patrick Lordy.
On episode 8, we talk prospects, and more prospects. This is the prospect special in celebration of the opening of Rookie Camp. Turn it up because we got a lot to talk about. You're listening to episode 8 of Puck and Roll. And thank you for tuning in for another edition of Puck and Roll. I am your host, Patrick Lorty, and before we talk about the up-and-coming stars, let us look back at the past week and recap the news and rumors with this week's edition of the Habs Blitz. Cannot start without mentioning the debut of Rookie Camp in Montreal. From September 15 to the 21st, 27 of the best Canadians prospects will hit the ice to show the team what they've got. Some will return to the juniors, some will get a shot at the AHL, some will get a shot at the main camp, and maybe even start the year in the National Hockey League. New Rockets head coach Jean-François Hull, along with his assistants Kelly Buchberger, Martin Laperrière, and Marco Marciano, will be the ones evaluating the players during practice and off the ice. There will be a home-away contest against the Ottawa Senators prospects, as well as an exhibition against the U Sports All-Stars. Prospects will also be going through various seminars focusing on nutrition, sports psychology, the science of sports, as well as general conditioning. Of the 27 players invited to camp, we will find 16 forwards, 8 defensemen, and 3 goalies. Some notable names include Xavier Simoneau, Gianni Fairbrother, Caden Gooley, Matthias Norlander, Raphael Harvey-Pinard, Riley Kinney, Jan Mysak, Jesse Ilinen, just to name a few of the names that you have already heard more than once on the show. Speaking of rookies, according to Renaud Lavoie from TVA Sport, the 2022 amateur draft will be held in Montreal on July 7th and 8th, while reporter Michael Lalancette from Le Soleil de Québec states that the QJMHL draft will be held June 12th to the 18th. This will mean the NHL draft will be held 2 weeks earlier than usual, where the Q's draft will be held 3 weeks earlier. With the main training camp fast approaching, there's of course no shortage of rumors. Former Arizona Coyotes defenseman Jason Demers openly stated on Tony Marinero's The Sick podcast that he hopes Marc Bergevin will offer him a contract, even if it's a PTO. Demers is using an old tactic of using the media to boost his chances of being contacted by a team, although no word on if Alex Galchenyuk has done the same. On the main roster, we have recently found out that Carey Price is already back on his skates and training on the ice. So is Jonathan Drouin, who is smiling ear to ear and has been welcomed back with open arms by his teammates, most notably by Tyler Toffoli and Nick Suzuki, who have been seen to be taking some kind of leadership role, as they were the 2 players who volunteered to represent the Habs on Media Day. Regular season starts October 13th in Toronto, folks, against the Maple Leafs at 7 p.m. We're closer than you think. Go, Habs, go. Now it's time to go to our distinguished panel consisting of Scott Cowing, Sebastian High, and Joshua Rosa. And we're going to start, of course, with prospects. Guys, we're talking prospects. We're talking more prospects. Oh my goodness, how many prospects are there? Let's talk about, I don't know, Caden Gooley and Matthias Norlander, maybe. You know, I'm guessing these are probably the 2 bigger names that are coming out of rookie camp that actually have a shot of making the team.
I don't think either of these guys should make the team, really, no matter how well they perform in camp. Like we've seen the Habs get, like, I guess, just make reactionary decisions based on one good camp to the detriment of players. We saw this with Kotkaniemi, whose first NHL season was phenomenal. Like his first season, his rookie season, was his best season in the league. But it also led to him being burnt out. And I really do believe that just staying in Finland for another couple of years would have been very good for his development. And we wouldn't be in the situation that we're in now with him being a member of the Carolina Hurricanes. And the aforementioned Victor Mete, another example where he was very close to being NHL ready. He had a very good camp, but you don't throw a young guy like that onto the first pairing, right? Like you have to also just think of how do you develop these players best? And Matthias Norlinder, for instance, has a phenomenal offensive ceiling. Like he is already a power play quarterback in a high level men's pro division in Sweden, in the SHL. He is probably going to be playing on the first pairing there. And yet, the last game that he played before coming over to training camp was probably his worst game that he ever played in the SHL. He played 9 minutes. There were 3 goals scored when he was on the ice, each of which was directly his fault. And I'm really hoping that one game can just be a little bit of a wake-up call to Montreal's management to not rush him, because again, there's such a high ceiling. You don't want to risk it just for one season on the third pairing. It's just not worthwhile.
You also don't want another Kotkaniemi, is what you're saying, right?
For sure. Like why would you want that, right? And with Caden Gooley, he's entering his last potential season in the WHL. Give it to him. He played like 3 games last season in the WHL before getting injured, or less than that. I think he played like 2. Like he barely played last season. Give him a full season to dominate, right? Like if he plays this season, he's going to dominate. Same thing at the World Juniors. He's going to be the potential captain and he's going to dominate. Give him that year. Kotkaniemi never dominated a single league since he was drafted. And I think it really hurt him. And just give these 2 guys at least another year each, maybe 2. And then you might actually get like legit top 4 defensemen when they're totally ready for the NHL and they won't bounce up and down between Laval and Montreal.
I still remember myself going back to what you said about Kotkaniemi not dominating in any league, Sebastian. I remember when I was covering some of Kotkaniemi's games back when he was in the SM Liga on a loan season, and Daniel Odette, the Habs former farmhand, outplayed him and actually had 3 points and Kotkaniemi had 1. And I think it was just a little breadcrumb that started rolling down the hill and transformed to the $15 offer sheet and all that other stuff. And going back to what you said about Gooley and Norlinder specifically, I think they're definitely at opposite ends of the spectrum in terms of where they are in their development. Norlinder's already playing in a men's league, which is a really good point to make regarding Habs fans thinking, oh, maybe he could play for the Canadiens. He already has experience playing with a number of veteran NHL guys, one of which being, let's say, Max Freeberg. He used to play for the Canadiens farm teams a while back. He's the captain there. And there's definitely a penchant for that he could play for the Canadiens come this season. However, in both cases, I do think that it's best to just let them continue to develop and let them play in their respective leagues. Caden Gooley's 2019-20 season was fantastic, but even then, that was just a brief glimpse of what he can do. He's still 19 years old. He's still yet to have his overager season. As you said, Sebastian, let him play and let him be the big top 4 defenseman he can be in Prince Albert. And same thing goes for Norlinder. Let him play with some talented guys, give him those opportunities. Bringing them to training camp, I think that's a great idea, and I think it would be really good for their development. But as for bringing them to the NHL, I think we need to wait a little bit before we can actually make that decision just yet.
It's also important to note that Rob Ramage said about Matthias Norlinder specifically, and I quote, "It's Montreal or Frölunda for Matthias Norlinder." Says he's a suspect to push for a spot with the Canadiens. And also, Sebastian, I'd like you maybe to talk about Jesse Ylönen a little bit, because he's also someone that is really high on the depth chart as far as Montreal is concerned, at least. Even Rob Ramage again said that the expectations are that he'll play games in Montreal this year. Do you think he's actually NHL ready at this point?
I don't think he's ready for any full-time spot. And the beauty of Montreal's winger depth is that there are like 10 or 11 guys ahead of him. So, and you only need 8 wingers at one time on a team. So there's a beauty in just giving him that time just by virtue of the other depth that we have. Because, I mean, look, Ylönen played a game with the Habs last season, and it was a throwaway last game of the season kind of thing against Edmonton. And he played like 9 minutes and he looked fine. He didn't stick out in any way, which was pretty decent for your first NHL game. But like I really think he's going to benefit from a full season in Laval, because he's going to be a top 6 winger. And like when he's on his game and when he's not burnt out, he is the most electrifying player in Laval. I love Rafael now. I love Ryan Poehling. I love so many of the young players. Like you look at Caden Primo, you look at everyone there. Josh Brook. Jesse Ylönen is the most exciting one of the bunch when he's not burnt out. He has a wicked shot. He is one of the fastest players in the AHL already at this age, and he has like good mitts. Like he has a high ceiling. I'm just going to revert to the same point I made beforehand. Let him just dominate the AHL for a year or 2 and then bring up later. I'm totally fine with them giving him like 5 or 10 games this season just to like give him some experience, show him how like also just the traveling is in the NHL and how it differs from the AHL. But as far as a full-time role is concerned, I don't think that's in danger of happening or likely to happen this season.
I definitely agree with you on that one about Yolen being allowed to dominate in the AHL, and I feel like he could if he was given a full season to play. It reminds me a lot of Charles Hudon with his release. He has that big, powerful, booming shot that's accurate. And regarding what you said about him playing for the Canadiens, I think it's best that the Habs did with Yolen and what they did with Otto Leskinen. Play him here and there, give him a couple of games here and there, and just let him feel out the NHL. The Canadiens had a really bad penchant in the past for forcing guys into minutes that they weren't ready for. You can think back to Christian Thomas when they played him in 18 games in 2014-15, and he just wasn't ready for that kind of ice time or that kind of role. And it shows as he's been bouncing around Europe for the past 4 seasons, not being able to find a home. So I definitely think that as for Yolen, then the Canadiens have a really, really talented player on their hands. But they should give him a chance to realize that he can be a talented player and that he can be that dominant force, but just give him a chance to really prove it.
I'm going to ask Josh a question. I'm curious to know what your opinion on this is. Do you think that maybe the way that the Jesperi Kotkaniemi offer sheet went down, and also the comments that started, going around the internet, let's call it like that, about the fact that he was rushed into the NHL. And even Marc Bergevin admitted that he should have stayed another year in Finland. Now, do you think the Canadiens are going to be a little more cautious with their prospects and say they're going to say, okay, we're going to start taking more time, maybe get like Sebastian and Scott have been saying, like, give an extra year either in the juniors or in the AHL to really dominate? Or is it going to be just one of those situations being like, listen, we need good players now, and if there's somebody that stands out, we'll just give you a shot and let's just run with it?
God, I hope they learn from this because we can't really afford too many more Jesperi Kotkaniemi's happening around here. I, as an outsider of the organization looking in, to me, it always seems like a way to drum up interest publicly. So you get guys like the 3rd overall pick, Jesperi Kotkaniemi, or the young guys like the Norlanders or the Metes or the Galchenyuks, and you bring them up super quick to drum up interest. It's a surprise that these guys are up here. It's a surprise that they're playing so well and so soon that you get more people watching, more excitement with these guys coming in. I don't know if that's the case, but that's how it feels to me. And I feel that they should really focus more on the team that they have and putting a better team on the ice in to end the future than drumming up interest for right now. Hopefully the team's good enough that they could just roll with what they have instead of having to do with some publicity.
Exactly. It's been a recurring theme on this show as well as to how, we live in this ridiculous age where we rush prospects and then we pay them an insane amount of money because of what they can potentially do rather than what they have done in the past. And that seems to have, let's call a spade a spade. It screwed us over. I hope Christian Dvorak ends up being the player that he's supposed to be, but I still believe in KK. He's guy, his ceiling is incredibly high. So, but I totally agree with you, Josh. Like the slower, old school approach being like, go through the proper levels, dominate like you have to. You don't need to have 18, 19-year-olds in the NHL, at this point in time. Even if they become 21, 22, 23 years old, if they come in and they dominate off the bat, then, it's going to be such a fun product. And speaking of fun products, Mr. Cowan, Mr. Scott, you have a couple of players from the WHL that seems to have popped on your screen that you really want to talk about. Go ahead, sir.
Yeah, for sure. I think for the past, or for its entire tenure, the WHL has definitely developed a reputation as a bit more of a defensive league as compared to some of the OHL and QMJHL with its high-scoring nature. But over this past season, even though they didn't really get to play a full season, there was a lot of guys that actually stood out to me, and I've compiled a few that I just wanted to talk about. The main one of which being Peyton Krebs. He was a 17th overall pick of the Vegas Golden Knights in the 2019 NHL entry draft, and in my opinion, he's the best player in the WHL right now. 5'11", 180 pounds. He led the league in scoring last season. He's put up 4 consecutive 40-point seasons. And he even had a 4-game cup of coffee with the Golden Knights this past season and a 5-game cup of coffee with the Henderson Silver Knights, where he put up point-per-game totals. He's a super talented playmaking center. He's got great offensive upside, great hands. His shot could leave a little bit to be desired, but he definitely seems like the kind of guy who can play those first-line minutes and really just make the players around him better down the middle. Leading directly on from that, on the opposite side of the spectrum of shooting, I actually wanted to bring up a little bit of a more out there kind of pick, and a guy that I kind of just stumbled upon when I was just